Everyone, it's Matt here. It's the 2nd of July 2025. I there I've been reflecting culturally how my culture shapes relationships, and I have to look at a few institutions, but I look at Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and combat sports. Um, so I've been talking about craftsmanship recently. When I'm talking about craftsmanship, I learned that idea from studying combat sports and also my family. Like, I come from a family of people who've done all kinds of interesting things. Some are farmers, some are professors at universities, but and the aspect I suppose that culturally I draw my identity from. And this isn't something consciously. I'm looking back at my behaviors and I'm looking back how I internalized these ideas as a child. But our grandfather on my father's side of the family was an incredibly important person. Um, he he was just this very bright guy. Now looking back and knowing who he was, I now understand that he was autistic. Um, but he had all these different science jobs and important positions and this is how it's described to me. So remembering that I don't really know, I'm talking about a family history and what was shoved down my throat. So we're talking about relationships and how we explore hierarchies through a taught belief system and ideology. Ideology has more definitions than that. Most of those definitions are more useful. When we talk about the study of ideology, you need to understand that this is one of the most high level concepts. So in physics, they use different mathematics for what's taught when we're describing quantum mechanics to what we use that when we are doing what's called Newtonian physics, which is above the quantum level, beyond the level of atoms, because when things become atoms, things get fucking crazy. So they have a different body of theory which describes those concepts. They have a different law of the universe that they use for that than they do for the everyday. And similarly with social science, we have those concepts coming up pretty damn fucking quick. But my point is that I grew up in this culture where we have there has to be a deference to the teacher because that teacher has spent more time studying. They have potentially mastered their craft. Who fucking knows? Most of the time that's not the case. Most of the time we use this tick and flick system. It's like, you got a degree, that means you're good. And like, no, that's not how it fucking works. That is a terrible way to measure competency. It's a really bad way. But if you're trying to get an accurate measurement, when we're looking at, and this is a good example of that concept. If you're looking at trying to get a good, for decision making, if you're trying to get a good measurement of a person's ability, you would never use their university qualifications as a measure. Never. Like, you have no fucking idea what they were learning because there's the interaction between them, their teachers, the bureaucracy, their intelligence, their upbringing. There's just so many fucking variables at play that you would never see someone graduating from a specific university as a true measure of ability. Ever. Right? But like, you would use it as a heuristic. So if you're trying to manage a state or something like that, well, you need to track these people. You need to find some means of understanding, and it just needs to be good enough. It just needs to be good enough. Just good enough. Right? That's all those things do. And to achieve good enough is an excellent thing. Like, it is difficult to measure any variable, and this is what I'm discussing when we're talking about levels of analysis. Like, if you're able to measure like a person's ability through constructing a framework of competencies, this is how we do training for medicine, for psychology, for all these different disciplines. They have different bodies which are defining what these people need to achieve. At the beginning of a course, if the course is done correctly, in most universities in Australia, you will have what are called learning outcomes. And those learning outcomes define, but at the end of this course, if you get a C grade, you kind of understand that, I don't know, but whatever the fuck the course is doing. And it's quite elaborate when you look at the system. If you understand the system, if you are, education as a discipline in and of itself is a very fine art, okay? And I respect it. We have, for its complexity, but the reality is that a degree is not going to measure a person's competency ever, not possible. So when we're talking about relationships, when we enter the workplace particularly, and this is where those skills which we were meant to be getting from university or some other training institution are meant to matter, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with people who okay, give me a second. This is a rant. Oh yeah, the people who are like their employers, their managers, and their colleagues, and colleagues is a far better metric than managers, are able to get these people in, and they're going to look at them and they're going to be like, bro, you did all this training at the university, you're here, but they didn't train you how we need you, right? And this is what happens when you have competency in the industry. Right? Because there are industries where people aren't competent. I know this because I'm a provisional psychologist. And what will happen is that you'll get these people who've been trained by these universities to act in a particular way, and they'll get into the industry. And in psychology, what happens, because we don't have a body of people who are competent enough to be able to say what is good or what is bad, what we have is that we have people coming into it and being assessed by people who are also incompetent, because it's not an industry-led profession, right? This is what happens when your industry doesn't lead it. It's meant to, we have this idea called the scientist practitioner model. And I talked previously about how really, if you're a psychologist, you're not a scientist practitioner, you're a scientist. You take measurements, you understand diagnosis. That's the only thing that you provide of value, which is different from yourself and a counselor. The other thing is that a psychologist who's trained in research methodology is able to assess if the modality of treatment is useful or not. And because of that capability, psychologists in Australia tend to be entrusted with as the custodians for psychology intervention methods, talk therapy methods. But in reality, what has happened, because the university is so separate, the APS, the Australian Psychology Society, has been so fucking ignorant, that what has happened is that we're training people for jobs which first of all don't exist, so we have to manufacture a market for us and differentiate ourselves from counsellors. But we also end up in this situation where our leadership and the people who are telling us what good looks like, who do not know what good looks like, are trying to create capabilities for a market which doesn't exist, which they have created by stealing it from counsellors. The jobs that you need psychologists for most, who are very senior and clinically trained, are the jobs that really should be being done by me, right? I am 30 years old. I'm one of the leaders in my field. That's fucked. That should not have happened. I'm the leader in my field because my seniors did not do their job and did not provide the service that they were meant to for the community. Right? Instead of the clinical psychologists and the money that they got from the government through diplomacy to be able to sponsor their discipline, producing clinicians who come out and then work with complex cases, 2-3 different diagnoses, with violence, who are in charge of hectic situations. Instead of training people to do that role, what they did is that they butted up the system so they could have fancy fucking, really cushy fucking jobs in private practice as clinical psychologists. And the worst thing what they did is that they made it so that those people get a bigger rebate from the Australian government through Medicare for doing their work. There is a complete failure in the leadership of psychology in Australia. The public should not appreciate psychology as a discipline. They should not see it as a genuine science in Australia. In other countries in the world, not because it can't be a science, not because if it's done correctly it's a science, but because the leadership is sufficiently incompetent and has their heads so fuck up their fucking asses that we are ruining the future of our discipline by not providing the training and organising the market and the incentives for that training and the industry around what is most useful and needed for society. Fuck you. I fucking hate the Australian Psychology Society.